Today we are making this chest of drawers with 10 drawers total with 4 different sizes, so you can store just about anything you want. It's got these great cherry drawer fronts, custom maple drawer pulls, and we've got some joinery in here that I'm willing to bet that you've never seen before. I'm so excited to share this project with you, so without any further ado, let's make something cool. We are going to start with the carcass, or the case, and it's all made out of 3/4 inch plywood. In this particular case, I made it out of 3/4 inch birch. First, cut all 5 parts to size, and if you can get the person at the store to at least rip your sheet of plywood in half for you, it'll be much easier for you to cut all the rest of the parts to size on your table saw at home. In fact, you can just go ahead and cut all of the main parts from the cut diagrams included in the plans. This will make your project go way quicker and keep you organized. By the way, the plans and dimensions will be available for purchase in the description below. Now that you got all your parts cut to size, now we have to deal with the corners. Now, I wanted this to look good from all sides, top, bottom, and side, so I wanted to stay away from a rabbet. Now, of course, you can do a rabbet if you want, so the obvious solution would be to do miters with like maybe a spline or something like that, and you absolutely can do that, but I wanted to do something just a little bit more fun and easy. So we're going to do something that is a cross between a miter and a rabbet. This is the Rockler Miterfold Dado set, and it is so incredibly cool. Now, before I begin, this is not sponsored by Rockler in any way, shape, or form. In fact, Rockler didn't even send this to me. I'm actually borrowing this from my friend Adam for this particular project. In fact, I didn't even know I was using this until I had gotten all of my parts cut, so I have actually changed the plans midway through the project. Now, this is just like any other dado set, except for it comes with this special blade right here. But what this blade enables you to do is to take the strength of a rabbet and combine it with the beauty of a miter, all in the same cut, in the same joint. On top of that, you can actually take one piece of material, run this on all 4 sides, there's a special sequence by the way, and then fold that material into a box, just like a piece of cardboard. So here's how it's intended to work. You're gonna run 2 parallel sides on this side of the fence. After that, you're going to switch sides with your fence on the other side of the blade. Now you're going to run the other 2 parallel sides through, then flip the panel over, and go ahead and get rid of all 4 of these corners because you're not going to need them. Then you're ready for glue up. And then you're done. Since these case pieces are a bit big for this miter fold system to take on, I'm going to bury the dado in the sacrificial fence. I'm going to run the top of the case and the bottom of the case on one side of the fence. Then I'm going to run the sides of the case on the other side of the fence. Another hot tip, make sure you make yourself a 0 insert plate. Otherwise, you're going to have a shit ton of tear out. Now we want to work on this rabbet that is on the bottom and on the top of our case. And another great thing about the Rockler Miterfold set is that it can do regular dados too. Now, while I still have my dado set installed, I'm going to run a 3/8 by 1/4 inch rabbet along the back of each of my case pieces. I'm also going to bury my dado set in the sacrificial fence so that I can get the exact dimensions that I'm looking for. Now that we got all of our parts cut, mitered, and dadoed, now we're ready for some assembly. But make sure to dry fit everything before you add any glue. Taking a couple of minutes to dry fit everything, make sure everything fits right, will save you so much time in the end. Now I'm just going to glue everything up. Now I am still going to clamp this, but this painter tape is just going to help me out a little bit. Now I'm going to clamp it all together. And of course, in order to help us stay square, we'll just go ahead and cut our back panel and attach it on while the rest of this thing cures. Now, I do want to take this time to let you know I am using a 1/4" panel for the back. But in the plans, it's actually going to be 1/2" paneling because I want you to use the scrap that's left over from all the drawer parts. I have different plans for that 1/2" scrap that's left over, so I'm going to be using this 1/4" panel that I just happen to have on hand. Then tack it in place with some 1" brads. Oh my god, it's already looking awesome. The case is all cured now, and we're ready to move on. But check out these nice, crisp corners. Since I'm a novice, I probably would not have been able to get a nice, crisp corner like this with a regular miter with a spline. I am going to install some trim on the face to hide these awful plywood edges, but before I do that, I want to go ahead and install the drawer slides first, because I want to use this space as a reference to take some 3/4" stock, make it flush with the face, then butt the slides right behind it. In the plans, I will be providing dimensions for even these little spacers because these spacers make installing drawer slides so much better. I went ahead and splurged on these soft close ball bearing drawer slides. I love them. Now we can work on the drawers and the fun joinery for the drawers. Now, since I changed my plan last minute, I'm going to have to use this tool the way it was not intended and run these parts individually because I've already got them cut individually. No big deal though. I'm just going to use my miter gauge. I'm going to take two sides that are parallel to each other, and I'm going to position the ends right at the apex of the miter blade. I'm going to go ahead and run it through on both sides. Do the same thing to its parallel side, running it through on both sides. Then I'm going to switch sides with the miter gauge and choose the other parallel sides, and again position it at the apex of the miter blade, running it through on both ends, on both pieces, and all the drawer sides are going to fit together like a puzzle piece. Now all I gotta do is run the grooves for the bottom and we'll be all set. And again, the beauty about this joint is you will not be able to see the grooves on any of the ends. And now for the tedious task of putting all these drawers together. I think I can get away with not using clamps. I'm just gonna use some painter's tape. Seen it done a million times. And this would be so much easier had I just used the miter fold dado set the correct way. Done. Maybe this won't be so tedious after all. It's gonna be tedious. Alright, the tedious task of putting the drawers together is all done. Now we begin the tedious task of sanding all the drawers, and then we can begin the tedious task of adding all of the drawer slides to the sides so that we can install them into the case. And of course I'm installing these on center, height-wise. Let's do that again. Now that I got all the drawers complete and installed, I want to turn my attention to the face trim before I start working on the drawer faces. I want to hide these ugly plywood edges. Obviously, you can do this with whatever kind of material you want, but I highly suggest using a hardwood. I'm going to use maple, but to give it a little bit more pizzazz and a little bit more visual interest, I'm going to put a little 18-degree bevel on all the edges. Obviously, we're going to be working with really small, thin material, so please try to accomplish this in the safest way you can. I'm going to be attaching this to a ledger board with some mounting tape, and then simply run it through my table saw. Now that's going to be great for this outer perimeter, but for the center, I'm going to run a bevel on both the sides. So for one of my sticks, after I run it through the first time, I'm simply going to take it off, flip it over, and run it through again while I still have that taper set. And for the trim, I am going to nail these in place with some 3/4 inch pins. You can barely tell they're there. Well, now I want to trim out the center, but I've created kind of a little situation for myself here where I could just butt this up against there, but with these two angles and this angle meeting it just doesn't look right. Now I guess I have a couple of decisions to either notch the top out and have this fit, or just notch the end out, and I think I'm going to go with that route. I'm going to try notching the end of this out to see if I can get it to fit. Just how to go about doing that. That's the question. Yeah, so notching out the end of this centerpiece, not working out at all. Couldn't figure out how to cut that angle, especially safely. So I decided that I'm going to cut a 45 into halfway through the top trim piece, and then cut a 45 on the end, and then we can just simply fit it in there like that. We should be good. As far as the drawer fronts are concerned, obviously you can make them out of whatever you want. In fact, I think there's actually enough left over from the 3/4 inch plywood for you to squeeze some drawer fronts out of that. But I want to make my drawer fronts out of this. A friend of mine, Adam Barnett, you should actually check out his Instagram. He has a phenomenal Instagram. Please check him out. In fact, stop what you're doing, subscribe to his Instagram right now. But he gave me several of these scrap sticker, we think is Brazilian cherry, or it could be regular cherry, I don't know. So I'm going to mill these down, edge them, plane them. I'll probably have to glue several of them together to make up the bigger drawers, but I think it's going to look great, and I love turning stuff like this into something fantastic. Now I'm going to bore an 1.5 inch wide hole with a Forstner Bit, and I'm only going to go about a 1/2 inch deep. After boring the 1.5 inch hole, I wanted to round these corners off, and I wanted to do it with a 1/4 inch round over, but the problem is that doomed ball bearing gets in the way, and I can't quite get down to where the cutter even hits the corner. So I had to settle for a little 1/8 inch round over bit, and it's a Dremel bit. So chucked it up in my Dremel and went to town. Just make sure you do this before you put in the horizontal slot. Alright, I am all set up on my router table to cut the slots to accept the maple drawer pulls. And I'm set up with a 1/4" straight cutting bit. I'm going to cut just a little over a 1/2 inch deep. But I also have these stops set up on each side so that when I go from side to side, I'm going to cut 4 inches total. Now I must implore you to make sure that when you set up for each different drawer to run a test cut. I can't stress that enough. And of course, while you're running these, make sure that you've got great control, have them up against the fence real nice and tight, and make sure you've got nice good downward pressure as well. Now that we got our drawer front complete, we've got our hole board, we've got the 1/8 inch round over, we've got our 1/4 inch slot. Now we get to turn our attention to the drawer pulls. And the drawer pulls are actually pretty simple. It's 1/4 inch maple, I've got this subtle radius, and to make processing these drawer pulls easier and safer, I've made this very simple jig. This is just 1/4 inch material. I've drawn a mock-up and cut the mock-up out on the top of the jig, and then given myself plenty of room to put my hands to keep my hands nice and safely away from all the processes and the cutters. Then I just stick my maple blanks on there with mounting tape, and then use a pattern bit to cut the radius. And to round over all 3 edges, I employed my Dremel again, fitted with the 1/8 inch round over bit. Again, using my handy jig, I mounted it to my bench, mounted my maple blank to the jig, but the beauty of this is that the bearing is actually going to ride along the edges of the jig. Just got one last detail that I want to add to these drawer pulls, and that's I want to run this relief on the other side to kind of fit your fingers in to make it easier to pull on these guys. And we can still use the same jig that we've been using. We're just gonna use the other side. Double side tape mount our drawer pulls. Just gonna use a simple 1/2 inch bead bit and run it from side to side. This bead is really ugly, but it doesn't matter because it's going to be facing down anyway. Won't even know it's there until you actually pull on it. Now before I go gluing my drawer pulls in my drawer fronts, I definitely want to make sure that I sand everything nice and smooth, break the corners, and tediously sand all of the radiuses and edges of the drawer pulls. Now it is time to set the drawer faces, and I'm sure you know this card trick. See what I did there? Place the cards to accurately gap your drawer faces. Put some double-sided mounting tape on the drawer itself for a temporary hold. Then once you've got everything spaced evenly, go ahead and press all the drawer faces into the mounting tape. Gingerly pull out your drawer, clamp it, and then screw it in place from the back. I like to go for a 3 seconds gap. With these particular cards, that's about 6 cards. Well, I mean, it's all done. Now all that's left to do is I'm gonna give this one final sanding. I'm gonna wipe it all down with mineral spirits, and then let's put a hard wax finish on this to really make those different materials pop. Really highlight the contrast between the cherry and the maple. I figure the best way to do that is to use Rubio Monaco, the Oil 2+. No tint, just pure. Putting in the last drawer, and that's it, she's done. disclosure, I just spent the last hour trying to wiggle that case into position because I just made the dimensions way too close for comfort, so I had to sand down the one side just to fit it into place. Now I just gotta fill up these drawers. So this is where I'm keeping a lot of my chisels and my marking tools, some of my more fine woodworking tools. This drawer is for those tools that I am constantly grabbing for, so I wanted to make sure it was up top and to the right. I definitely have a lot more organization to go. I'm gonna be making some dividers and all that other good stuff when I get the time. Oh my god, I am so happy with the way this chest of drawers have turned out. I love the character of the cherry drawer fronts. I am obsessed with these custom drawer pulls. They are very comfortable, very soft. I love the way it blends in with the workbench. And if I do say so myself, I am quite proud of the consistent gaps I got with all the drawer fronts. But I can tell you one thing, and that is that Adam is never getting his dado set back. But this design has so much potential for different design possibilities, different storage possibilities, and I can't wait to see what you guys come up with, so please make sure to send me your pictures. That's it for this project, and I'll see you in the next one.